Well, Luke, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
This one's going to be, I've got normal questions and some specific questions for you, just
Yeah.
like this. But, you are arguably, to my recollection, my oldest film acquaintance ever.
You didn't make films before Serum 13?
um, not, no, everything else was in my backyard at that point. And before that, I was like really into
By yourself?
stop motion Lego videos. Um,
Oh, sorry.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I did the stop motion Lego videos because I wanted to, because at least I could, with Legos, I could create my own world, you know? I couldn't really do
Mm-hmm.
pirates at like age 15 in my backyard, but I could do Pirates of the Caribbean
Mm-hmm.
Legos, you know? Uh,
Yeah.
which that was fun. But then, once I eventually got to, 18, 19, I'm like, okay, I can do a little something. I can do a little
A
something.
little live action.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
little live action. And
I
I
never
don't
got
even
into the
remember
stop
how I
motion
first
stuff, but
approached you, dude. Because you used your dad's camera for the
I
first
remember.
project we ever did. Um,
I remember.
you do? Tell me.
It was, yeah, I made a recap video for Abby's high school basketball.
Oh my God, yes,
Uh,
I remember that. Yeah, now I
yeah.
do.
And that was like my first time trying to like do fun After Effects stuff to footage that I had shot because like I got into the video world editing like Halo and Call of Duty
I remember that
montages.
now. Yeah, now I remember
Yeah.
that because you would basically kind of like just make these like really like like hype videos that were pretty popular at the time. People we were still figuring out
Yeah.
like all the things that we could do on YouTube, you know. And then now
Yeah.
we ended up with this, and then we created the internet, and then it spun off, and then it was and now nobody knows what it is anymore. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
There's all these different
Yeah. And
apps
like,
and
well, you reached out to me after seeing that video and you were like, hey, do you shoot short films? And I was like, I forget what I said, but pretty much I was like, no, like I'd never done that, but
yeah,
I'm interested in like, because you also wanted like the visual effects aspect of it too. And
that's true.
because
Yeah,
it was like a VFX heavy movie, and so I was more into the VFX at the time and trying to learn that. But I think that project, along with like others in that era, like I started liking being behind the camera more and more, and that's
yeah.
kind of when
Because the
I changed
the
my
next
mind. Yeah.
project that we ended up doing was Reach, which was really interesting. I remember
Yeah,
that was miserable.
it was cold.
It was so cold.
It's very cool.
Um, and I mean, although I was cold and bundled up, at least I was moving around because I was in it, and I was being dragged around on a cliff and stuff like that. But you were just kind of
It's true.
stationary, trying to like keep your body heat and everything. It
The
was a bit,
fingers would always go numb about halfway through the day, and then
mhm.
like when we would go to, did we go to Gold Star? Was that our lunch every day?
Yeah, that was Gold Star. Yep. Yeah, I had an
That was
existential
like,
crisis at that Gold Star. I'm like, oh, dude, because I didn't even know if that short film would even work out at that point, and I'm like, I
yeah,
I realized I might be wasting my time and suffering for nothing, and I'm like, oh, we'll
literally,
just
yeah.
stick it through and see what we can come out with.
You have to have that mindset. Like I feel that's such a filmmaking thing.
Yeah,
Like
and I realized actually
just
that's
choosing to believe
that
in
is a
it.
common thing. It's like that never
Mm-hmm.
goes away. Maybe you're not freezing your
No.
balls off, but you somewhere along the lines of schedule or production, no matter how smoothly you plan it out, you will end up in like, oh shoot, maybe this won't work out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
And from what I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts with like filmmakers who are doing the biggest stuff, and I feel like they still have that too. Like,
Hmm. I talked to a
what am
guy
I
who
doing?
was
Like, am I in over my head?
on a actually it was the last episode that just got released. He's a DP and a gaffer, but he's gaffed and done some electrical work on larger productions. One of them was up in Cleveland for the unit that was shooting some parts of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. And I
Cool.
asked him about the differences of it, and it's just like, oh, so yeah, it really is all the same, basically. It's just
Hmm.
larger
It's the
sandboxes
same
you
but
play on.
bigger. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hmm. But
Yep.
you eventually you decided that VFX. I recall vividly that you said that you didn't want to be stuck behind a computer. You wanted to be sort of out and doing stuff.
Hmm.
And you were at the
Yeah.
time pretty competent. At least you were getting very competent with visual effects. Like if you had made that next leap into like modeling and then animation, then like you probably could have gone that route and done pretty well. I feel like.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. And yeah. Yeah, it was just tough because the lifestyle of it was just like sitting behind a computer
Mm-hmm.
and like
And you're a pretty active
it's
person. Like you like to jog, and like you just got back from the gym and everything. So you like to move a little bit more.
yeah, yeah, I figured I didn't want to like spend all my career like sitting behind a desk and because I feel like I can only be behind a desk like a couple hours at a time and then my productivity just starts to drop off and
Do you have
I want to go
ADHD or something like
do
that?
something. I don't know. I mean, I think it just points to what my true interests are. Like, I don't know,
Mm.
even with color grading, like I enjoy color grading, but I wouldn't want to only do that forever. Um, yeah, I don't know. Just not my preference.
Do you think
Yeah.
well, because was there something specific that when you first encountered about cinematography that's like, okay, other than the fact that you're more mobile and you're moving around more, that you enjoyed just out of pure interest?
Yeah, I think it's because like the stuff that I loved about VFX was that you got to like have a very strong hand in like what something looked like. And I think cinematography is like basically just a wider, like more generalized
Yeah.
uh, role that influences how the image looks. Um, because like when you do have visual effects, you still have a say and like you can collaborate with those people and you get to collaborate with the lighting department and the production design and all those things come together to create the image. And I think that's why like
Because you're sort of
cinematography is
the
for
last
that.
one of the last people that's going to end up touching it, so you end up collaborating more with the people that are handling it in the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you eventually decided to move out of Cincinnati to Nashville, and then you moved to New York for a time, and then where are you at now? You move around a lot.
I'm in New York.
You're in New York.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've just been doing a lot of travel work since I moved here, which is new for me. So that's why it looks like I'm homeless because I kind of am. I kind of live at airports right now. Hopefully that'll change soon. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So do you still get hit up because you've done? It seems like your career went. I mean, you kind of, from my understanding, went where people were wanting you, and that ended up being in like the music video space, which you've done a fair amount of.
Mhm.
Um, have you been approached to
Yeah.
do any narrative work yet? I know we've had this conversation before, but obviously podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, for the podcast. Yeah, so obviously like I started out behind the camera in narrative, like working with you and with Henry and Max Kaplan. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this know who those people are.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so that was like my kind of first love when it came to filmmaking was doing narrative stuff. Um, but then yeah, the music video stuff just kind of happened because I played drums at the time and um, obviously my sister Abby does her music stuff and so I was like doing some stuff for her visualizers and like promo stuff um, and that gave me like a really easy in to the music video world right when I came to Nashville. So, and that's also kind of the only type of work that there is in Nashville. It's like mostly music video stuff. So there are some good narrative filmmakers there, but I just never like got the call to do a short or anything. Um,
Do you think that
but that's
community is a
always
little bit
been
more
like,
closed off? Like there's already people who have people that they work with, and so it's a little harder to break into.
I don't think so. Like Nashville, everybody was like super welcoming and yeah, like I feel like I got working really fast there just because like people were so down. Just be like, oh, there's a new DP in town. Like, yeah, I'll totally meet for coffee. And some of them worked with me, some of them didn't. But um, yeah, I think since I was doing so much music video stuff, people didn't even think to reach out to me when they had a short film idea. They didn't know that I was
Kind of
like
an
dying
assumption.
to do a short. Yeah, because I never said it out loud. I just assumed that people would know that I wanted to shoot narrative. But um, so I got a little more intentional about that like halfway through last year, kind of just like planting that seed and be like, yeah, I want to shoot more narrative. And obviously when I moved to New York, I told people like I moved here because I want to get into more narrative and commercial stuff, but ultimately narrative. So I did just shoot a short here in January, and that was really fun.
Oh,
So
sweet. What's the
yeah,
duration of that going to end up being, you think?
maybe around 10 minutes, maybe a little less. Yeah,
A good short
we
film.
had 3
Yeah.
days. Yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
once you start going beyond 10 minutes with a short film, like you're really just pitching a proof of concept at that point, which obviously, 10 minutes and below can be a proof of concept, but it's definitely more deliberate, if you're going above that duration in terms of like who you want to see this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, it's tough. Like, I don't know much about submitting to festivals and like the best strategies, but I'm pretty sure a really long short film is tough to get in. Um, so yeah, I'm hoping that it's a good little punchy little narrative. I think it's gonna be really good. I
Okay.
haven't seen a cut or anything yet,
How
but
does the New York
I'm
crowd
excited about it.
compare to the Nashville crowd?
Hmm. it- Here's what I tell people about the New York crowd. It's hard to generalize at all up here because it's so diverse and it's so
You
vast.
got so much of everything.
And and I haven't even been here a year, so I'm still trying to figure that out. But just obvious things like the Nashville crowd is smaller, a little more intimate. Like everybody knows each other more or less, or knows somebody who knows somebody. Like it's pretty tight knit. Um, and New York is obviously so much bigger than that.
Because other people
Um,
from other countries go to New York to start their career in that way.
hmm exactly. Yeah. So it's so vast, but the people I've encountered so far here have been like really great and open and yeah, willing to chat and meet up and yeah,
Okay.
good folks. Yeah.
Well, now that you've sort of dipped your toes into a different market and coming from Nashville and then being born in Cincinnati, um, you've met a lot of different people. And I would imagine that
hmm
you've got your own share of stories of red flags that have become stories that became red flags of what to look out for when it comes to deciding who you work with, I would imagine.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I haven't had any like real catastrophic experiences. There have just been moments where like you need to set a boundary here and there. Like if you are working for a rate that's like lower than what you typically charge, I've learned to like at least tell the person like here's what I would typically charge, but let me know if you need um if the budget doesn't allow, we can totally have that conversation. Um Rather than just being like, yeah, I'll do it for $100, and then like they
Right.
come to you again and they're like, all right, we got another 100 for you, so um yeah, just things like that to establish clear boundaries and you'll be okay like 99% of the time. I think if there are truly red flag people who are like truly toxic, they don't last very long. That's my theory. Um so
It's kind of the
or
natural
yeah,
laws of
they end up
human interaction, though. Obviously, you want to
yeah.
work with people that are nice to work with, and if you don't,
hmm
uh, yeah, that's probably pretty accurate. Now that I think about it,
hmm
because I've some people that I've talked to, and mostly the people I've talked to are they're still on the local level in the indie world, but I have brushed, especially that last guest, who have had interactions with um, people that were in the more studio realm, not necessarily the indie realm. Um,
hmm yeah.
it's probably the people I would imagine who are toxic usually start off in the world that are in the studio world and they never
Hmm.
went through the indie world and got, grinded out their negative sides of their personality because they didn't have that
Mm,
amount of negative interaction to course correct their own personalities. And so those
mm-hmm.
people at the top
Because they didn't
kind of
have to
end up
like
staying.
start
Yeah.
from the bottom in a way.
Hmm. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so. I think so.
that makes sense. Yeah, I don't really. I feel like I still feel so separated from that world of like the biggest people doing the biggest movies because I'm like just now getting back into narrative, doing zero budget stuff. So,
Well, I think what's kind of
yeah, it's
maybe
like
what helped for you is that like you do like to, when it comes to music videos, you do like to tell it in a very narrative way, even because
yeah.
there's an abstract
Hmm.
nature obviously in music videos, and some artists completely lean into that, um, and just make it wild and wacky and everything because I guess that's
Hmm.
their vibe. Um, but do you think that that has helped with at least being able to continue fostering a type of narrative lens that you'll eventually be able to translate into the narrative work?
Yeah, I hope when people look at the music video work I've done that they can at least like use their imagination and picture that I could shoot a narrative thing. Because yeah, I feel like I lean into those like naturalistic or at least like motivated lighting styles. I've definitely learned to be a little more extravagant and do things that don't necessarily make sense when like the video calls for it.
Hmm.
Um, it's been a learning curve though. I would say that doesn't come like first and foremost and like naturally to me to just like put a blue color where it doesn't make sense or like flashing lights at the camera
Which,
for no
but
reason
that does
other than
happen
to
from
look
time to
interesting.
time, though. I've noticed.
Y- Absolutely, yeah, and the video is usually calling for it, but it's usually just not the first thing I think of. Like I tend to think in very like logical terms of like you know it's what time of day is it and what
Is the
time
sun
period is
out?
it and yeah, yeah, exactly, things like
Have you
that.
had
So
interactions with clients that didn't like their suggestions didn't make sense, and then you tried to put not put your foot down, but try to veer them in a more uh, try to veer them in a direction that actually made sense for their own music video for their own sake. Because
mm,
sometimes artists get in their own way.
yeah, I think well yeah I'm usually working with a director and not an artist directly, but I think if I'm struggling to understand what a director is going for, um, instead of trying to like insert my own idea there, I think what I've had more success with is like asking for references or things where they can point to something and be like, this is what I'm going for. And that helps me understand it more. Um, yeah, I feel like trying to understand what somebody's going for always helps me
So
rather
you've kind
than
of learned that
me
there's like
trying to
a
explain.
yeah.
Yeah,
So that you
yeah,
kind of
instead
learned
of
that
me
there's
trying
like
to
a back
explain like
door
this is what.
to indirect language in order to kind of sneak in, your suggestions about exactly the way you're viewing things. And sometimes that might not make sense, and there's a way to communicate that without actually saying, "Hey, this doesn't make sense." There's a very indirect language that it seems like you've probably learned.
Yeah, or they could be using like it especially happens when I'm working for with a director for the first time and we don't have that shorthand. And so maybe they're saying something that makes perfect sense to a DP that they work with normally, but to me, I'm like, I don't really understand what you mean uh by I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example. Like teal and orange. Like maybe I don't understand what you mean by that. Like show me an example of what you mean by teal and orange. Um, or
Do you think
uh,
directors? Do you think there's more directors who don't know how to communicate specifically and concisely, and they kind of use, references in vague terms in order to communicate their ideas instead of being very specific?
well, I think like
Because there's that
you've got
balance
to.
between being too vague and being too specific. Because if you're too specific, then you kind of pigeonhole the people that are beneath you and trying to accomplish your vision in order to actually, you're squeezing them too tight, and then that's not a good place for them creatively to be.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like being able to communicate efficiently is so important. But yeah, whenever you have that first time collaboration with somebody, that's when I feel like um, references are important, or things that will assist that communication, so they can describe what they want and also back it up with, like, here's an image that I think does this really well, or it's going to be fast paced. Here's a video that I think is fast paced that it will kind of feel like, just things that help me understand them, because then I can help them better as a DP.
Okay. In the past years of you shooting music videos, are there trend changes that you have witnessed from artists and how they want to visually communicate their music?
Like from music artists?
Yeah, for music videos.
Yeah, I feel like obviously the obvious answer is the short form stuff and the TikTok stuff. I think we've seen a lot of resources be shifted from making the long form music videos into like the short form reels and TikTok. That's definitely more of a priority now. So even if an artist likes making music videos, they'll be like, hey, make sure it works for 9:16. Like, make sure that the frame, we're not cutting anything important out when we make it vertical, because we want to repurpose this
So
for shorter form
it's
stuff.
very common to want to frame things for two different formats or multiple formats at the same time
Oh
within
yeah,
the same frame.
I would say most things, music and commercial, are like that. But you can choose like how important that is to you. Like, well, here's something I do, like a 3:2 or like 4:3 aspect ratio a lot when people are asking for that, because then it's easier. Like, you don't have to think about it. Like, it's usually going to work for a vertical video if you're framing like
You
that. But
found
if
that
you shoot
16 by 9 is too
widescreen,
restrictive.
yeah, or like if you shoot widescreen anamorphic, like, that's going to be tough to repurpose for nine by
Because once you cut
sixteen.
out, 16, not 16, yeah, 16 by 9, the vertical one, 9 by 16
Mm-hmm.
is the widescreen one,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that you're just not left with a lot of pixels and the degree of quality to actually upload things with.
Yeah, or if it's like a two shot, like there's a person here and a person here, you're only going to be able to fit one of them when you cut out the vertical.
Hmm.
So that's, yeah, I would say that's kind of that's probably the biggest trend, I guess, I've seen. Yeah.
When it comes to music videos, a lot of artists choose very outlandish and sometimes styles that ride that fine line of absurdism. When it comes to the abstract nature of either their music or how they're specifically wanting to portray their music on a music video. Why do you think some artists choose to go that route instead of a more narrative format?
Hmm. You mean by absurdism, just like things
Visually.
that don't have like a narrative
Yeah, like you
structure
got,
to
I was
them?
looking at your
Yeah.
website before this, and there was like a still of, someone in a bikini with like a steel unicorn horn or something like that. And I'm like, that's what I'm talking about right there. I don't
That
understand
video
the
is sick.
context. There's nothing there that tells me anything. It's like, it's kind of cool. It's definitely very provocative in that way. But, I'm just curious, like, why do you think some artists choose to kind of go that route when it comes to telling their
Hmm.
vision?
Well, I mean, the short form nature of music videos, like, sometimes you're gonna end up going a route that maybe there is meaning to it, but it's just gonna be told in a more metaphorical way with um, the set design. Um, like, I think people who are doing that thing well, they're not making these choices by accident or by like randomness. I think there's usually a reason and a motivation behind it, and I think you can feel that, and it comes across because it's done confidently, rather than somebody just seeing an artist who wore a ski mask and then they just wear a ski mask just because some other artist did it.
Right.
That's just an example.
Or they're just a
But
Michael Myers
yeah,
fan, you know?
yeah. So yeah, I think that's totally acceptable, and even I mean, it's kind of a lot of my favorite music videos, actually, now that I think of it, are more that metaphorical style that don't have like a linear narrative structure to them,
Mm.
but they still feel cinematic because they have meaning behind the images. So yeah.
Do you have any like skill sets that you think haven't been fully fleshed out that you think would you'd be able to work on more and they would reveal themselves more in narrative work compared to music videos?
Mm. Skills I want to work on that will be in
Skills that
narrative.
you either have or that you think that you know you can flesh out that will reveal themselves more in narrative work like short films and feature films compared to the work that you've done in
Mm.
music.
Yeah, I was just trying to think back on my short film experience in January, and I remember even saying this to the directors. I was like, I'm curious to see how this cuts together because I don't often like have to think about eye line all the time and like sensor height, like the camera height when you're cutting back and forth in a dialogue scene.
Mm.
Like I'm usually changing height in a very like utilitarian way. Like, oh, I want to get this person's shoulder in and they're sitting, so I'm going to lower the camera here and shoot up. But is that going to feel weird when it's cutting between two different heights, or is it going to have an effect that I wasn't going for? Um, that's a very specific example that I just thought of because I don't often have to do that. Like, I'm not shooting dialogue that often. Um,
Because there's
so I'm
different
curious to see how
purposes,
that all cuts
obviously,
together.
unconsciously, of how the viewer is going to interpret what they're seeing visually, and how they're going to process that,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to like a music video. You know, when you're like doing work with dialogue, you're not just shooting the message or the purpose of the scene, you're shooting for the specifics of the dialogue and communicating how the people are interacting unconsciously with the camera angles.
Totally. Yeah, and that's something that I'm curious if I need to get more technical about that, or if I could just, or if I should just like keep following my instinct, because I pretty much just followed my instinct on set. I'm like, I'm not taking a tape measure and being like, okay, this is how far I was from this person, so I'm gonna go be the same exact distance. Like, I'm not doing any of that. I'm just like, this looks good,
You can
this
get it
feels
pretty
right.
close with your
So
eye, you know. I've seen that use like tape measures used
yeah.
before, and it's usually used for like uh some technical purpose, not necessarily like a creative purpose for understanding the
Mm-hmm.
dialogue and the relationship between the characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know they use it when they're like pulling on film too, like to get the exact distance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I'm curious to see how that works out and if I need to work on that more. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
and just yeah, storytelling.
you're primarily the director of photography. That's usually what you get sourced to do. What has your experience been like with people who have been hired on to be underneath you within your department, whether it be a gaffer, focus puller, maybe a second camera op or something
Mhm.
like that? And tell me about your experiences with that and the communication skills when it comes to you running your own micro crew.
Yeah, it is interesting because we start out as like it's just me and you, like director DP, and like what's a gaffer? Like I never heard of that. Like when I started out, what's
Mm-hmm.
an AC? Like I have to always put my focus, right? So um yeah, but then a couple years into shooting, I started like working with gaffers and ACs. Like around the time I moved to Nashville, I worked with a gaffer for the first time. And that's been like an incredibly valuable experience to have like ACs, gaffers, camera operators, because like I learn so much from them because they're all so specialized in what they do. Um, like I like working with ACs who know way more about camera stuff than I do. I like working with gaffers who know way more about lighting stuff than I do. And camera operators who have a much better instinct and do it all the time. Um, so it's been so valuable, and I've made a lot of friends that way too. Yeah,
You ever like
I
shuttle some
feel
of
like
your
I've got
friends
really
from
lucky.
Nashville out to New York to do a project?
Actually, my buddy Trent, shout out Trent. He lives just down the street from me now in Brooklyn. He just moved there like 2 weeks ago.
From Nashville?
So yeah, from Nashville. He's a Steadicam operator that I work
Oh,
with a
okay.
lot. Good buddy. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
So
Because one
one
of the
down. We'll get the rest
you're
of the
gonna
crew
you're
up
gonna bring
here.
them all up. You're just gonna like, hey,
Yeah,
yo,
that's
New
the plan.
York's better.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. Yep.
Uh, you shot a three-part series, music video series for Abby, your sister,
Yeah.
whose creative growth was also been interesting to watch too. How it fleshed and feathered out.
Hmm.
Because I also knew Abby. Actually, I knew Abby before I knew you, just from because we played for the same basketball organization,
Right.
which is how I originally met
Right.
you. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's also been really cool to see because I knew her from before then, and um, it kind of makes sense that you've shot things for Abby, not just because she's your sister, but it's also your particular paths of growth have also merged together, at least for certain points of time, when it comes to your
Hmm.
creativity. And you shot that, if I recall correctly, that three-part series on film, which was your first time shooting on film. Am I right on that?
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about the benefits of shooting on film compared to digital, and how did you schedule the limited time that you have on film because you can't reset over and over, and because it does restrict you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. It's funny because we shot that like almost exactly a year ago now. Um, and I'm like really getting the itch to shoot film again. So hopefully it happens. Hopefully the right project comes up
It's
soon that I
infectious.
could use it on. Yeah, yeah, I do miss it. Were you asking about like the runtime and like how do you manage
Oh,
the?
it's kind of a two-part question. One specific with the managing the usage of your limited film that you have, in the canister, or how much you
Mhm.
have on set, and the other was the benefits because we moved from film to digital as an industry, and so, but
Yeah.
now film is something very specific that you request for because there's reasons creatively. Goodness, I need more caffeine. Or maybe I just need a solid burrito like you. I need to just run out middle of the podcast and go grab a burrito.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
is about because when film gets requested, it's for a very specific purpose. And so I was wondering
Hmm.
what purposes that you have found when you were requested to use film as opposed to digital.
Yeah. Well, it started out as like, hey, Abby, I want to do something on film. And, you know, I don't think I'm gonna like, I don't think somebody's gonna hire me and ask me to shoot on film if I haven't done something yet. So, but I knew that like she would trust me to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like it works out somehow. So that's how it started. And then it kind of like grew, the idea kind of grew from there. And then it turned into this three-part thing. Um, and yeah, our friend Elise Hubers, who also came in and
I've met her a
co-directed the
number of
thing.
times, but just in passing.
Okay, cool, cool. Um, but yeah, so I think it at least on like the indie level, when you're buying like the exact amount of film you need, maybe a little more, give a tiny margin for error. It makes you work so different. Like, and I think that shows in the final product because you're having to rehearse before you shoot, um,
Mm-hmm.
and plan out your edit before you shoot. That's what we did. We like built out an animatic for the whole thing. Um, yeah, so it just makes you like really, really intentional, really slow down. Um, and yeah, something I did was like I didn't want to try to make it any more complicated than it needed to be. So like if you watch the video, it's actually very simple. There's no like crazy camera moves or visual
Pretty
effects or
stationary.
anything like that. Yeah, it's pretty locked off. It's just like slow zooms, um, which, now that I've done that and sort of laid that foundation, I'd want to try some more lighting stuff because it was all like exteriors, it was all outside, so it's pretty simple. I didn't have to really think about lighting too
With
much.
overcast too.
Yeah, pretty easy to expose for. Yep.
I didn't know this beforehand, but there was also different tints of film that come
Mm-hmm.
as a part of the stock. Like film itself is not like one thing. There's different types of film technically that go on. I didn't know that
Yeah,
beforehand.
like white balance. Yeah, it's like tungsten and daylight. Yep.
hmm And you chose
Yep.
tungsten for Abby's music video, right?
We did, and then we did just 200T straight up, no filtration on the part one, and then part two, I use an 85 filter, which is like an orange filter that corrects it to daylight. I would say it overcorrects it. After my experience, it makes everything like really warm and kind of just one
Hmm.
color. So I don't know if I would use that again. Maybe for a very specific thing, but
Does it make it
it
more
certainly made it warmer.
monochromatic?
I would say so. Yeah, because it's like
That would be
literally
difficult to
blocking
work
the
with.
blue light. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't like it very much, but
So for the scheduling of it, you did it shot by shot and you pre-planned absolutely everything. There was nothing. Was there anything on the spot that happened with film?
um, hmm. I mean, maybe some of our shots were slightly different than we had planned. Maybe for the better, maybe for worse. But yeah, for the most part, I feel like we really stuck to the animatic. Yeah, pretty much.
And do you feel that paid off
Yeah,
for what you were going for?
I think so. Yeah. Um, it was definitely one of those projects where you're like freaking out the whole time. Like, is this gonna be worth it? Is
Yeah,
this
because it
gonna
was the
be?
first
First
time
of
you're
all,
like,
is it even gonna come back? Yeah, like, is it even gonna be exposed right? Is it gonna, I don't know,
because you
get
don't know
lost?
until you
It's
get it
so
back.
different. Yeah, when you're working with like a physical medium like that, and it's not on an SD card, it's so like, it's such a different feeling.
It would have to be nerve
Um,
wracking, I would think.
yeah, it was. I think I would be less nervous now that I've done it, but the first time, yeah, it was just like, is this even? Are we even getting this? Yeah.
What's a typical size crew for a music video that you do?
Um, I would say like director and me, and then gaffer plus like one person typically, unless it's like a bigger lighting setup. And then a first AC. I usually don't get a second AC, just the size stuff I'm working on. But if I can get a second AC, it's great. Um, and then just like art department, art assistant, depending on how
Mm-hmm.
much production design is going on, hair, makeup, and then like 20 label people. Just kidding. Sometimes, but usually not. Usually I'm working with like pretty like indie artists, which is fun.
Okay. As the
Yeah.
DP, what have you found to be the case that directors are most concerned about when it comes to shot composition?
Mm. Like what do the directors value most in the composition?
Yeah,
Like,
and the part two that I have to that question is like, so just to give some context, is what have you found that they don't care about as much that you think they should give more consideration to?
well, I would say there's a spectrum of directors. This is what I've learned over the past couple years. Like, there are some that really are super visual, and they are great DPs themselves, even if they don't call themselves that. And then there are some who are more, they have they bring great ideas and philosophy to the table, but they don't care as much about how its shot is composed. So a lot of times you just have to change how you communicate with those people based on how into the weeds they are with the technical
In what
and
ways do you have to
composition.
shift your language with them?
Well, like, I'm not talking as much about like, I don't know,
Not talking shop.
Anamorphic or spherical, or like I'm thinking we put them on the bottom right third and light them short side. I don't know, just dumb things like that. Like I usually talk to the people who aren't as like super versed in very specific cinematography language. I like to talk to them with images that they like, because then I can kind of like put together in my mind, okay, this is sort of the language that they're into. Because I feel like people have taste, and I work with people who have great taste. They just sort of need some assistance sometimes to for me to learn exactly what that is, even if it's just like, what shows do you like, what movies are you watching.
Right.
That
But
will
that's like
say a
something
lot
that like
about.
I think about a lot too, is that, because there's so many nuanced ways to describe something visually.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's even more nuanced ways to describe it specifically from a DP's perspective in the technical language that it goes to, that's associated with the things that you are trying to describe.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, as someone who is not necessarily versed in the grand specifics, it is very difficult, because even if you have a specific vision but you lack some of the technical vocabulary in order to communicate with your DP, there's that unspoken friction between a director who's like that, or a producer who's like that, and the DP themselves, even though there might be a middle ground to meet on to actually flesh out the vision, which it might be objectively good in the end product. How do you
Mm-hmm.
meet on the middle ground when it comes to those people?
Mm. Well, kind of just like I said, just like references and stuff. I feel like that's really powerful. They can also get in the way if uh you know, if the references are not something that you can perfectly match because of the locations you're shooting in, or the crew and the time you have. Um, but they can at least set up a foundation of like, okay, this is kind of the language that they're into. Let's see how close we can get. Yeah. And just like also managing expectations
So
when
just
like
a couple people
it,
pointing at the
yeah.
exact same thing. It's like, hey, that. And you're like, oh, okay, that.
Right. Yeah, it's helpful. It's simple, but it's like, yeah, I feel like that's a good basis. But I tend to use references more with people that I haven't worked with, and then the people that I have worked with, we have that sort of shorthand, and we know
Mm-hmm.
what we're talking about.
But for directors who
Yeah.
don't have that shorthand, obviously they have blind spots, when it comes to
Mhm.
executing the vision that you're looking for. Are there any commonalities that you've come across when it comes to directors who don't have that technical language, like in terms of what the common blind spots that type of vocabulary would actually completely mitigate?
Hmm. I don't know. I try not to see like a lack of cinematography knowledge and terminology. I try not to see that as like a weakness or a blind spot. It's just because
Really?
like there are amazing directors who do the best, biggest stuff, and they just don't care about that specific stuff. And so they will hire cinematographers for that reason. And they'll be like, I want to collaborate with you, but here's how I want the collaboration to be. Like, I'm going to say what's happening, and I want you to figure out how to cover it. And so as long as I know that ahead of time, then I can put in the proper preparation. Um, but yeah, so the only thing that is objectively bad is not communicating your style and how you like to work. Um, but it's also my responsibility to like ask that and get that out of them. So yeah, that's why those prep conversations are so
So
important
you think a lot of the
to understand each other.
lubrication in the relationship of the working relationship between the DP and the director is really just saying exactly what their weaknesses are and how they like to go about things?
Totally. Yeah. I think just the director, I've had directors ask me how I like to work, and I usually just reverse that question. Because
So
like
how do you like to
I'm
work?
I yeah, because I feel like I am like pretty flexible, or I've learned to become more flexible um through you know, because my job at the end of the day is to support the director. So if there's a certain way that they like to work, then now I understand, okay, I'm going to light for 360. I'm just going to use practical lighting because this director likes a lot of freedom on set. They like to be like, oh, well, let's grab this shot and oh, let's grab this shot. But other directors are very specific and they have very specific shot sizes, you know, what focal length they want to use. They know how long it's going to be in the edit. And so with those people, I can get a little more shapy with the light and be a little more, less flexible with, having a stand right outside of frame.
You can be more specific if you're given the leg room to do it.
Yeah. And one is not better than the other. It's just like my job to understand how somebody likes to work and then how I can accommodate them the best I can. And sometimes I can't. Sometimes I'm like, I can't.
Are there any downsides to being too flexible?
As a DP?
Yeah.
I would say you can risk like losing your voice as a DP. Or yeah, you definitely still want to have a voice and still have like an opinion on things, but
because it's a hard balance to strike sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say hopefully the people who are hiring you, they've seen your work and they value your opinion, and because they hired you because they want, the flavor of stuff that you're already putting out. And it's not so much like, oh, I'm going to completely upend my style and everything that I like, put all the images that I like to the side and just support the director and press record on something that I'm not happy with. So I try to strike a balance there.
Has that happened to you before?
I would say so. I think it's happening less and less as I learn more how to take the jobs that are right. And also just, learning how I can make the version of what the director wants in the way that I'm happy with too.
Okay.
While not going rogue and being like, this is my vision.
Not trying to hijack someone else's thing that they're hiring you on for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that actually happens a little bit too much at the higher levels, the studio productions. People want to go outside of their wheel. Not that I don't want to say they go outside their wheelhouse, because obviously the longer you spend in the creative world, the more things you have in your utility belt that you could utilize, And so sometimes if you see a need, even if it's outside your department, to you want to go and help or offer your opinion or advice or your input, but it's not for the job that you hired for. And so at the higher levels, I would suspect that a lot more of the clashes comes from, it's like too many cooks in the kitchen. You know what I mean? It's like if you put, you can't put all the greatest chefs in the world in the same kitchen without having any arguments. Yeah. It's just not going to happen. You're not. They're going to be fighting about the dish more than actually just fulfilling their roles in cooking. Now, maybe I'm completely wrong, but I say that specifically because I did see a clip of Blake Lively, because she's in the news and stuff like that right now about, she implied that she would reveal how much she'd like to be more involved later on than just being an actress, in terms of how she likes to work, and which goes back to the whole thing about communication and boundaries and things like that, and which is kind of sad. But I started ranting and I had a question prepped already ready to go, and I hate that. It's my I don't know if I have ADHD or if I'm on the spectrum, or if I just need an external capacitor just implanted into my brain in order to be able to hold the extra electrical activity to hold that thought for a second. I don't know. Maybe with Neuralink I'll be able to do something like that. I don't know.
It's just more coffee.
Honestly, it's just more coffee. You just need more lubrication, a little more oil in the engine, you know.
When I'm like trembling after my fifth cup, and
Hmm.
I'm like, why do I
My
feel like the
body's
world is
screwed, but
ending?
my
Maybe
mind is great right now.
yeah, like maybe I just need one more, just one more coffee. I think
It's
we'll
just
fix
one
it.
more. That's the most
Yeah,
seductive statement that I've ever. Just one more. Just one more. It's
just
so
yeah,
alluring
yeah.
in that regard.
Especially in
Other than
Brooklyn, there's a coffee shop on every block. Yeah.
yeah, I've heard that. I've never been to New York, but I've heard that there's
Mm,
basically just like every type. Do you get like you could have in New York like the same? You could eat at a different place at every single day, and you would never cover it in your entire lifetime. It's unfathomable.
yeah, it's vast. Yeah,
Mhm. Do you have
very
any
dense.
critiques of the indie world when it comes to how they work and anything that you've noticed as a negative that if it were removed, they would either get more work or move up into that next level of filmmaking?
Are you talking about like DPs specifically, or like in narrative
More general.
directors?
Yeah, more general.
Hmm. I don't know. And do you mean like narrative stuff?
Yeah, I would say more narrative. I feel like music videos are they're a lot more specific. I feel like than narrative because narrative has
Yeah.
a lot more to try to accomplish compared to a music video.
I don't know. I feel like I'm just trying to figure it out just as much as anybody else is.
I mean, it's not exactly a
So,
it's not the most fair question,
do
but
you
it
mean
is interesting.
do you mean to like create better work or like to be successful?
I think more
If
to be successful. I mean,
yeah.
if you've been in the industry long enough, even if you're maybe not necessarily the best creativity, have the best format of creativity, you still learn things in terms of working in the industry and things like that. But the
Yeah.
only thing I've come across, and I've asked this question multiple times to different guests, is that it's just like, no, we're all just really broke and we need money for things.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like yeah, I really don't know how to be successful as a narrative filmmaker. I think, as much as
Because you're still getting
people
back into
don't
it.
yeah, yeah, I think as much as people don't like to think this, there's always going to be a little bit of luck involved with, having a film take off, right place at the right time. But I think at least a prerequisite that I've seen for an indie film being successful is this is just from the outside looking in. Um, it's just that it's told like from an authentic place. Like you're not trying to make it to be successful. You're
Mm,
making this film because it's like important to you. Um, and because you really want to make it and you feel like film is the best way to tell this story or express this idea. Um, I feel like that's like the least common denominator of everything that is successful. That doesn't guarantee that it's gonna be successful. So
right. You have to kind
keep
of work
making
for your
stuff.
luck.
Right. Yeah. But hopefully creating it in and of itself is like a good um is like a reward too. And maybe just keep doing commercials and other stuff on the side to make money.
Is there a genre of narrative work that you think you would fully be able to release and flesh out all of the skills that you've learned as a DP?
Hmm. I don't know. A couple people have asked me in the past, like if I would lean into a specific genre, and I don't think I would. I think I just
Really?
like, yeah, I don't know. I just like stuff that's like very character driven, um, very, you know, uh, emotional, or like can lend itself to like a more
It sounds more like
stylized
a
look.
tearjerker than an action movie. That's what I'm getting.
I don't, not necessarily a tearjerker, just like stuff that has to do with, I don't know, just humanity, the experience of being a human,
Hmm.
which is pretty vague. So, and
You
can,
just need to
uh,
adapt one of Nietzsche's books. That's all you got to do. I don't know
I
if
guess
anyone
so. I don't
would
know.
want to go see that, but it would definitely
Probably
fit the
not.
bill.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really just comes down to if I read a script and I resonate with it, or I could see a way that that I would be able to tackle that, then I'm usually more inclined to do it. Um, but there are some that I just don't connect as much with. Not because they're worse. It's just like not for me. It's for somebody else. So
Second to setting, learning to set boundaries and communicate those boundaries. Are there any of the lessons that you've learned from your experience in the industry?
yeah, I mean that's something I'm really working on now too. I feel like I learned very slowly how to like I used to feel really bad charging any money to do this stuff because I was like, well, I love it, so I don't deserve to get paid for
Mm-hmm.
it. And like that definitely ran me for a while. Um for like the first few years of doing stuff, and that was like back when I was shooting weddings. Not really like DPing. Um but yeah, then I think I just connected with more people who had that confidence in charging what they charge, and um so I just started like borrowing that confidence and being like, okay, if they can be confident, then I can be confident. um Started to charge more. And then I think when I moved to New York last year, I was pretty desperate to just like, because I went a few months without any work, and I was just like, I want to shoot stuff, I want to use a camera, even if I don't get paid for it. So I was just like,
You did
basically,
something for Post Malone, didn't you?
yeah, that
What
was
was your role in that?
DP.
Oh, you DP. Which music video was that? I forget.
It
I
was
knew I
one,
saw this a while ago, but like it's escaped my memory at this point.
yeah, it was one of the country ones with him and Ernest.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Were you nervous
It
about
got,
working with a big artist like that?
I was, but I got the call like 2 days or one day, I forget, before the gig. And
Dear God, that's no
so
time. There's
there
no
was
prep time
no,
there.
yeah, I mean, um, yeah. So there was no time to really get nervous about it. It was just like treat it like any other gig. And it ended up being like one of the most relaxed sets ever because like he didn't even know what song he wanted to do until we were already lit for it.
Really?
So it was just a very relaxed thing. Like he wasn't
Oh, so you
trying to really
set an
do something.
environment and then he decided which. Well, because there's choreography and stuff like that involved too, um,
Not with this
right?
one.
Not with this
Not with
one.
this. No, no. It was just
Yeah,
two guys in front of a truck, and it was really fun. Very
yeah.
fun experience. Yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
yeah. I was wondering if it was the big one, but I
Mm,
didn't watch. I saw the one that you did, but I might be mixing up music videos in my head because
maybe there's
I've seen
a lot of them have trucks. Yeah.
a lot of them have trucks. You know, it's
Yeah.
not. I don't know what his obsession was with trucks. I guess it's just the country thing.
Yeah. But it was fun. It was fun working with him. Since there wasn't any prep time or anything, a lot of times he would just talk to me and be like, "Hey, can we grab this shot over here?" So it's like, in a way, getting to work with him that closely was actually really
How
cool.
long was the shoot for that?
We only shot for like a few hours. Yeah,
Oh,
3 hours.
okay. So that was an in the bag. It was one and done sort of thing.
Yeah, we were mostly just hanging around all day, just kind of waiting for him to be ready. So it's just what you do.
Waiting
They you
for
kind of
him to
work on
be
their
ready.
schedule.
What does that mean? Like just deciding what he wants to do?
Well, yeah, it was just a very relaxed thing. It wasn't like, hey, we're shooting at this time. Here's the call time, and here's when we wrap. It's just more like
It sounds very spontaneous.
super spontaneous. Yeah, yeah. But
Okay.
you happen to have a crew. Yeah.
How big was the crew for something so spontaneous? For an artist
Very
like that?
similar to the size that I talked about earlier. Is like one gaffer, one grip, one AC, Steadicam operator, me, the director.
So you had no time to be like, hey, can we shoot this on film? No.
Right. That would have been crazy.
Yeah, especially for something like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
do you have any final thoughts you want to leave with the audience?
Um, I don't know.
You were never
keep
one to give
making
advice.
stuff.
That's why I phrase this one this way.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If I had to give advice, I would just give the advice that I would give myself, which is just like keep making stuff that you are proud of. Um, don't let filmmaking run your life.
I
That's a
haven't
new
heard
one that
that
I'm
one yet.
working on.
That was interesting coming from you.
Yeah. Um, it's fun and it's cool, but it's not everything. Um, yeah, and get enough sleep, drink enough water.
Yeah,
Typical, you
that's
know.
fair. I mean, I guess that is that might be the first illusion that needs to be broken when it comes to creatives first starting off in their, their journey of wherever they're trying to go or get to,
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
that one aspect cannot fulfill every aspect of your life that you need it to fulfill,
Yeah,
no matter how much you love it.
it's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we sometimes get lost in like, especially when I'm doing a passion project, I get lost in like, what time I'm sacrificing to, or mental energy or sleep, or you know, I'm not I stop working out and things like that just to get this thing over the finish line. Um, when there might be a more balanced way to go
There is
about
no
it and
such thing as
still
a
make
holy
stuff.
grail because there's always another holy grail once you're done with the one that you're done with.
Right. It's like, oh, if I can just put my all into this one thing, then I'll get to rest or I'll get to, take it
You'd be like
easy. When
Thanos. You
you
just
just
rest on the work that you've done and watch the sunset and go farming.
right,
There's no
right.
such thing as
But
completion.
yeah, and it never happens. And then you just have the next thing. Or you start to pick apart that thing and be like, this is why it's not good enough and why I
Hmm.
need to do another thing. And it's just an endless cycle. I was talking to Henry about this recently. We were
Are you
talking
gonna
about,
do? Are you gonna do his short film?
I think so. Yeah. We just need to figure out like how we're going to get it funded because it's pretty like
He sent the
ambitious.
script over to me and I read it, or at least the version he sent me.
Yeah.
I think he's probably tweaked it by now, but yeah, it was a
Hmm.
couple months ago, so we may have gotten the same script.
Yeah. Probably similar. But yeah, I'm really excited about it. And I'm excited about how excited he is about it. Um,
You gonna try to do that one on
yeah.
film? I know Henry loves film. He tried to get you to do analog rainbow on film. I recall.
Did we talk about that?
I
That's
I
crazy. I
remember
think
that coming up at some point. Yeah.
I vaguely remember. I'm glad I didn't shoot on film that early. That would have been rough. I
That
hardly knew
might.
how to shoot digital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that film turned out
So,
great, and I've talked to some other people who've actually watched it, because 4x3 Chase Crawford's company, he picked it up and it's on their
yeah.
platform,
Yeah.
and I know other people are pretty familiar with it, so it'll be interesting to see Henry come back because he took a long hiatus uh,
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah. We
I
did
mean,
just
not
do a
as long
music
as me. I
video.
mean, I'm probably gonna hold the record forever, but
You're working on it though. Yeah, he definitely took, I mean, just a deliberate step away from filmmaking for a while. So it's cool to see him
he
getting
got
back
married and
into it.
traveled the world. Like, I mean, what do you? That's like
Yeah,
that's a good substitute. That's a pretty good substitute. It's not like you
definitely.
sat at home and did nothing all day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's cool. It's cool collaborating with him again because it's like he's got sort of this mental like mindset that's completely unaffected by like having been in the industry for years. But he's still his ideas are big and they come from a true place. Just stuff I was talking about earlier.
His taste is a little more
Um,
untainted.
I guess so. Or yeah, it's like it's not derivative. Like the stuff that he is
Hmm.
making isn't derivative of like stuff that's on social media right now. It's completely, his, um, which is cool.
Yeah.
I dig that.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, Luke. I appreciate
Of
it.
course, brother. Thank you for having me on.
Yep.
Let's get chatting.
Good job.